Well, it's a new time, 12 noon, and a new season. And speaking for my co-presidents, Roy Wiley and Susie Marion, and the entire board of directors, boy, are we glad to see you all. We're forever grateful to Debbie and to Gail. They prepared for us a wonderful fall season. This is just the first of them. We have a new member, Peter Schaaf, making his debut appearance. And we have Anita Bonanno, who we don't see as often as we would like. Plus, music by our own former performing member, co-president, Susie Marion. And so it's going to be a wonderful program.
This summer, I got a call from Peter Schaaf, and I hadn't known him in New York City, but I feel like I've met a dear friend. And he's a famous photographer, so he's going to talk about that. But my relationship with him has been as a pianist. He was a former student of Rosina Levine at Juilliard, who was my teacher. And Peter and I have played for each other. And what's kind of fun is like I'll be working on one Chopin scherzo, but he's working on all 4 Chopin scherzo. So he seems to be learning the piano repertoire. And it's just been delightful to meet somebody who is so beautifully obsessed. So on to Peter.
Greetings, everybody. This is an honor for me, and it was totally unexpected. I expected to join this club and to meet members at meetings and things, but now here you are meeting me instead. It is a wonder that we can do anything at all during this pandemic, of course. Many thanks to Debbie and to Gail for their help. I don't consider myself a star in any way, but I have had the privilege of photographing and making music with some very great artists. And I have photos and anecdotes to share with you. My professional life really divides into 3 parts neatly. First, I was a pianist, then a photographer, and now I'm a pianist, sort of an ABA form. And following that ABA structure, I will begin and end this talk with music. I will play now, or try to play now, the Chopin Polonaise in C# minor. I am now after 78 years in New York, I have come to Houston. I'm now a permanent resident. And I came this spring after being living solitary in New York because of the pandemic. And my daughter Chloe suggested that I get an apartment in Houston, even if only for a few weeks. But I liked the idea, and I liked the idea of being by family and being in a big city where there's culture and good medicine and good friends, and so here I am. Chloe and her husband are both musicians. Chloe's a mezzo, very fine, and she's actually in the chorus of the Houston Grand Opera Carmen production, which is coming this month, later this month. So if you see one of the smugglers or factory girls who's noticeably pregnant, that's probably my daughter Chloe. Let's see. I have the picture of the entry page to my website because that's the, starting with that, so you can see I have 2 careers. And if you click on the photo side of my, on the photographer side of my website, you see many of my portraits. There's like maybe 20 or 30 of them. And you'll see some more portraits like this. You'll also see teaching shots. This, I think, this was a project I did as pro bono. I did it for Juilliard because I wanted to. Over 100 studio teachers, and it was sort of journalism and recording who was doing what. Also, I did a book once of close-up pictures of a violin. You can see that on the website. And let's see, if you go to the pianist side of the website, you'll see the 3 recordings that I've made. And if you click on one, say this one, Chopin, you can hear not only just 30-second clips, you can hear the entire tracks of all the waltzes. Also, there's a little musical joke. This is, I think only pianists will get the joke, but everybody else can read the explanation. And it's, anyway, hope you enjoy it. Okay. When I was 5 years old, I was living in Flushing, Queens, New York, and a neighbor across the street gave us his old piano. He was getting rid of it. It was probably cluttering up his front hall or something. It was it looked very much like this, although it was painted light green, sort of hideous. My brother was 5 years older, and my parents, he was 10, so my parents got a teacher for him. And the teacher would come over for a lesson, and after she left, I would climb up on the piano bench, and I don't know what I would play. I guess I would try to imitate what I heard, or maybe I would just fool around. But my parents saw that I was interested, so they asked the teacher, could you teach Peter too? And she said, no, he's too young. And my parents were very smart, so they just simply got another teacher. My parents had a friend who was a professor, a composer at Brooklyn College, where my dad taught. And he came over, and he thought I had talent. He told my parents they should get a teacher for me who would prepare me for Juilliard to enter the prep division. The preparatory division met on Saturdays, and I did get in, and I got in, where is it? There I am. I was 8 years old when I entered the Juilliard building for the first time. And I spent, I think 10 years there, going there on Saturdays. I went all through high school, and it was fun. This is a little later. I think I was about 10 there. By then, my parents had bought a better piano. I was not pushed either by my teachers or by my parents, and I did not push myself. I was not really a good piano student. I wished in a way that I had spent my teenage years with more technic practice, but I did not. And I was interested in other things. I was interested in math and science, and I actually went to MIT for a little while. Very little while. I didn't like it at all. I came running back and saying, I want to be a musician. And so I entered the Juilliard School. And here's Juilliard. This is the new building in Lincoln Center. That's not the one I entered, though. This is back in 1960. This is the old, this building is now the Manhattan School building. They bought it. But this is where I had all my music education. I wasn't a photographer then. I don't have pictures of my teachers. I don't have pictures of a lot of things that happened that I wish I had pictures of now. But I do have pictures that I took later of people who inspired me. And of course, Arthur Rubinstein was one of the greatest ones. I went to many concerts of his and remember them with great pleasure. Also, Vladimir Ashkenazy. I went to several of his recitals. He was really an idol of mine. For one thing, he was a lot closer to my age. And of course, he was an incomparably fine pianist and musician. And also, Emil Gilels. I don't know how popular Gilels was in the country, but he played the single most memorable recital I ever heard, I think, was his. And also his fabulous recording of the Brahms B-flat concerto. Next. Oh, while I was at Juilliard, I had the opportunity to make a little money and to play as an accompanist in teachers' studios. And this is Marian Schekele-Freschel. Marian Freschel was, I think, she's very famous among singers. She taught Marian Anderson way, way back. And she also taught Shirley Verrett and several other very fine singers. And I played for her students. And then by meeting the students, they would have auditions, they would hire me for that, or they would have recitals. And so Juilliard had 3 categories. They had you audition to be an accompanist for the school, and either you made $3 an hour, $4, or $5 an hour. And I got $5 an hour. I played, this is not my picture, but it's the only one I could find of Leonard Rose. And I played for his students. I played for him, actually. I helped him learn a piece, the first Beethoven sonata that he was going to record. But all cellists play the other 4 Beethoven sonatas, and everybody avoids the first one because it's not very interesting. But I rehearsed it with him. And more about him later. This is a great violin teacher, Dorothy DeLay. And again, I wish these were taken years later after I played for them, but I'm glad to have the pictures. And also a very great violin teacher, Ivan Galamian. He was actually the first one I ever played for. I think when I was 12, my best friend in the pre-college or the prep division was Paul Rosenthal, a violinist, and I went to his lessons with Galamian. And so all this accompanying led to my being known by Columbia Artist Management and young concert artists, and they would hire me to play recitals with, in this case, Jean-Jacques Kantaroff, a wonderful French violinist who became a fine conductor. Also, Kyung-Hwa Chung. We played we toured for several years. Renata Tebaldi. Now, this obviously isn't my picture. It's an old publicity shot. But I was called at the last minute to replace some pianist who couldn't play 4 dates with Vivaldi. And I'll start taking, I have an anecdote here. Rehearsing with her, I mean, she was, this was a farewell tour. The first funny thing was, here I was at the last minute trying to learn these notes of pieces that I didn't know. I was sort of scrambling, and in rehearsal she kept calling me maestro, and I kept thinking, I was sort of embarrassed, I didn't feel like a maestro at the moment. But later on I told people this, and I found out that all Italian singers call all pianists maestro. I mean, that's just, that's the tradition. Also, the funny thing, her high notes were not as high as they used to be when she was younger. So she had in her contract stipulated that every piano must be tuned to 440 and not one speck above that. And she carried around with her a 12-inch metal bar, the tuning bar, she would place it on the piano and hit it with a mallet and make sure that it was at 440. And also another consequence of that was that she was singing her big aria, which was a Beethoven concert aria called A Perfido, and it's in C major. And on the piano, there's a lot of runs and scales in C major and a lot of octaves on C major, all on the white keys. She had me transpose it to B major, which uses all the black keys all the time, and it was 3 times as hard, but we did it. Okay, back to Rose, because I have a story. Rose had an assistant, Channing Robbins, and also a fine cellist and teacher. Channing stopped me in the hall at Juilliard one day and said, "Peter, Mr. Rose would like you to consider something. He has a student, a very young student, who's very talented, but who has had no experience playing with the piano. And Juilliard can't pay you for this because he's not in the upper school yet. But the family has no money, or very, very little money. And they may have made an offer, though. The family says if you can come over on a Sunday at noon and play with their son, they will have you to sit with them at their dinner, their noontime dinner." And I said, "I love Chinese food, so that sounds great." And of course, it was Yo-Yo Ma. And so Yo-Yo was 14 when I met him. He's about 21 in this picture. And he was so sweet. He's just got the loveliest personality. He was very modest. Of course, he was very young, but I mean, and of course, played the cello beautifully at that age. And we were friends for several years, and I played recitals with him. I also played his New York recital, his debut, and it was fun. I took another picture of him too, also about the same age, maybe 20 years old. I was just beginning photography then. So this is just the same picture that published in the New York Times. What's coming next is this to remind me, these aren't my cameras, but this is just a picture to remind me to talk about photography now, because this is when I started. I started by accident. I got a new puppy, and I wanted pictures of a new puppy. And I only had a very cheap Instamatic camera, Kodak. And there was a store was advertising a single lens reflex camera for $99. And I had no idea what a reflex camera was, but I knew it was the latest thing, so I bought it. And I started reading, and I started experimenting, and it all made sense to me, and I fell in love with it, and it's hard to. It was a long process, but actually, part of the process was I realized I wanted more equipment, and I didn't really have money for it. So I said, "I better just give this hobby up, or maybe start making money at it. And I luckily had a friend who wanted photos of his objects, and he collected these antique rings, and he would lecture about them. And I photographed them, and he's been a client and a friend for 50 years or so now. And so I was able to make money and continue. I wanted to be a general photographer. I wanted landscapes and buildings and all sorts of things and people. So I just took whatever pictures I had and made sort of a portfolio and went around to agents. And the agents all rejected me. I mean, I wasn't good yet. It takes quite a while to learn this photography. But once when I was leaving an agent, the receptionist there, just a friendly guy, he stopped me and said, "Oh, do you mind if I look at your portfolio too?" And I said, "Sure." So he looked through, and I had taken a couple of pictures of friends. So I had a couple of portraits as the last two pictures in my portfolio. When he got to these, he stopped and he said, "Wow, I wish I could take portraits like this." And he said, "You know, your other pictures are sort of ordinary, but these are really exceptional. You should do portraiture." And it was news to me. I had no idea, but I thought about it and I took them seriously, and I realized that I knew all sorts of young musicians who were trying to start careers, and they all needed photos. So I started the business, and I've been doing that for years since. But anyway, a call came to Juilliard from Life magazine asking if they had a picture of Rosina Levine. So somebody called me and said, "Peter, do you have a picture of her?" And I said no, but they said, when they said Life magazine called for it, I immediately called Rosina Levine. We had remained friends. I wasn't studying with her anymore, but I occasionally played bridge with her or visited her. And I said, "Do you mind if I take some pictures?" And she said, "No, I don't mind." I came and I took some headshots, and they weren't good. They were just a person's head smiling or not. Anyway, but they were new pictures, and I took them into Life magazine. And I showed them to the assistant editor, and she saw my enthusiasm, so she brought me into the main editor, John Loengard, and he was actually a very famous editor and photographer himself. And he looked at the pictures, and he just politely said that, you know, that isn't what we want. You know, we already have a picture of her teaching. And then he politely looked at my portfolio. He sort of flipped through my things very quickly. I mean, these editors see thousands of pictures they can see in a glance. Anyway, he sort of hesitated at one, but he flipped through all the others. And when he was through, he came back to the one that he hesitated on. He pulled it out and he said, "You've got one good picture here." And I guess I hoped I had more, but I was pleased to have the one. And he went and he gave me a little lecture on why that was a good picture. And what it was a photograph of a string quartet. And it was the usual photograph of after the final chord of a movement, everybody throws their bow in the air. Okay, but they were on a stage, but that was only the top half of the picture. The bottom half of the picture was the audience seats, and they were all empty. They made they were sort of curved, and it made a very nice composition. But so you had, it made you think, where's the audience? And then you looked and then you saw, oh, well, they're not wearing suits and ties or anything. They're just in shirts. Oh, well, it must be a rehearsal. So he explains that a good picture has to have two elements in it, at least two elements in it, because it will make you think. And that a simple headshot, you know, occasionally you need a simple headshot, but it's not what he calls a good picture, a sort of journalistic picture. So I quickly ran back to Rosina Levine, asked her permission to take while she was teaching, set up a light, took the pictures, brought them in. And I found out later that, oh no, no, I heard him. The editor said that he never expected to see me again, but he saw the pictures and he said, oh, let me borrow the negatives and print some of these. We might use them. And he did, and that was the one. And so, of course, this was a big feather in my cap. It was something I had always sort of dreamed of. It's a Life magazine was like the be all and end all. But the other be all and end all for me was the New York Times. And in those days, the Times had lots of classical music coverage. They don't have it at all now, but they did then. And I love those photos, people in rehearsal, people in performance, interviews in their homes. I wanted to do that kind of work. But how to do it, how to get to the editor. The editor, it turns out, was a very difficult person. He was a very good editor, but he was always acting annoyed. And when I see him, he would look at my things and say, oh, yeah, well, we have people already, you know, oh, don't bother me, that's fine. So I needed to get pictures that he would use, and I figured out a way to do it, which was to go to the Village Voice. Was a paper, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a small paper in New York for culture, and they had good writing and good journalism and good music criticism, but they didn't have a particular photographer for music. So I went and I showed my stuff to the editor there, and he said, okay, you can call up the Metropolitan Opera or wherever and say that you're from the Village Voice. And so I did, and I went, and I could go to the dress rehearsals, and when they had the press in to take pictures. And these are a couple of pictures I took. That's Elliott Carter on top, and Pierre Boulez. That was actually Pierre Boulez's last night conducting the New York Philharmonic. Anyway, the Voice would print them, and I think I got $20 each when they were printed. But that gave me entree. And now here's a Houston story. The big break came with the Houston Grand Opera's production in the 70s of Porgy and Bess. So I'm sure some of you remember it. It was wildly popular here. It was so good that it was brought to Broadway in a theater. And I knew Clama Dale, who was the soprano with the Bess. I knew her from Juilliard. And somehow I found out about it and got myself invited to the photo shoot, the dress rehearsal. And at one point, the high point of the opera, the Porgy and the Bess are alone in the center of the stage, and they're singing their love duet. And of course, the standard thing to do is to take a close-up picture of them singing it. Well, I didn't do that, or maybe I did it, but then I walked around to the side of the orchestra pit, and I looked down and I saw that there was a beautiful composition here. And I took it, and I was aided. The pit, there was a trumpeter in the last row, and he actually raised his instrument just for me. It was a lucky thing, and here's the picture. It looks a lot better on a real print. This is a newspaper, of course, can't do black. But here's a picture, and it fulfills the John Lowengarde thing. There's more than one thing in it. So it makes you look and it makes you think. And so I brought this in right away to Lonnie Schlein, the New York Times editor. And he looked at it and he grabbed it and he looked at me and said, "You can't show this to anyone else." And of course, he had no right to say that, but I didn't want to show it to anyone else. And he took it and he published it, and that was it. I was in. I was able to do other assignments for him. Here's an assignment I did for Itzhak Perlman. Here's one I did. I don't know who these people are, but it was a Jerome Kern musical that they were presenting in Carnegie Recital Hall, as it was called then. It's now called Wild Hall. I like it because I got the chandeliers in it. And this is a few months later when Madame Levine died. This was in the New York Times. It's from the same shoot, obviously. It's a different picture, but actually I like this one better than the one that Life published. But this is one of George Pearl. I just really like the composition of this one. And here's one. Okay, let's see. Houston members, does anybody know who this is? It's a very wonderful pianist. And, Debbie, do you have to unmute anybody or see if anybody's waving their hands that they know?
Actually, yeah, if someone wants to raise their, well, I'd have to go to a different view. Why don't we wait until the end? But I'm not sure who that is.
Okay. Well, I know nobody's sure. Okay, maybe the person waving their hand is sure. This is Shura Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky was not well known in America, but he was very well known in Europe, and he lived in England for most of his life. Fabulous pianist, played everything, and just a romantic, beautiful pianist. Incidentally, I just read that one reason he wasn't too well known is that conductors didn't like him because there was no guarantee that what he did in rehearsal was what he was going to do in performance. He loved improvising, not changing notes or anything, but just changing tempi or dynamics. Okay, well, continuing. Here are a couple of pictures that got into Time magazine. Time wasn't really a culture magazine, but they did every now and then they'd publish if they were superstars like Fankarian or Pavarotti and Scotto here. What's next? This is John Vickers, and I did perform with John Vickers, had a wonderful relation. We toured, one of the things we did is make a tour in Canada, mainly in Saskatchewan, because he was from Saskatchewan. And he was visiting an old friend, and the old friend was a farmer and had a big new tractor or combine, whatever that is, and John climbs right up in it and makes himself at home. John loved farming, and actually at one point in his life he was a truck driver long before he made it big in singing. And the story of how I met him is very interesting. I was playing an audition, just a normal audition for a singer, in some little theater, and we walked on stage and he sang this Mozart aria, I think. And then we were walking off. I hear a voice from up in the seat saying, "Oh, pianist, can you come up here a second?" So I turned around, I went up, and it was Richard Wojtak. Richard Wojtak was a conductor at the Met, and if you ever listened in the old days to the Metropolitan Opera Saturday intermission features, Richard was almost always the pianist they had playing for their illustrations. Richard could play anything on the piano. He could sight read a Stravinsky score with 40 lines on it. He could just sit down and play it at the piano. He was amazing. But Richard told me that he had this opera workshop the coming summer in Pittsburgh. And would I like to be an assistant there, coach and conductor? And I said, well, I don't really know anything much about opera. And he said, well, that doesn't matter. He said, do you know anything about conducting? And I said, no. And he said, well, you have to know a little bit. So if you take a couple of lessons with Martin Rich, who's another conductor friend of his at the Met, he said, take lessons with him, and then you can be my assistant. And I said, okay. And I did it, and we did the Magic Flute. And that at one point he was, later when he was conducting it with another group, with orchestra, he actually let me conduct the dress rehearsal the entire thing. It was quite an experience. But the story here is that a couple of years later, or whenever, he called me and said, you know, I've been the pianist for John Vickers for a long time, but I can't play his dates this year. I'm too busy at the Met. Would you like to do his recital accompaniment? And I said, absolutely. So Vickers came over to try me out at my apartment, and we sang a couple of arias, and then he surprised me by putting Schubert's Winterreise in front of me. And luckily I knew it and I loved it. And so we played a couple of songs, and he was very pleased. He said, okay, would you like to play with me this November? I have some Winterreise dates lined up. He said, absolutely. One funny thing is that to rehearse with him, he had a home in Bermuda. His wife was from Bermuda, and they had bought this huge home. And it was during the summer, and he had a big living room with big windows, and sun was shining in. It was just complete sunshine and summer. And here we were for hours at a time talking about ice and snow and winter. It was very funny. But we did do a good tour. And the last one on the tour was made into a recording. This is not my photo. I don't particularly like that photo, but that's my name. So I was the pianist. And you can actually hear this one, not on my website, but it's on YouTube. You have to specify Vickers Winterreise Schaaf, because he made another one that he didn't like, that somebody made him. Well, it's a long story, but our recording is available on YouTube. Oh, I was carrying a camera around. I wasn't being a photographer, but I did take one picture in a dressing room. And this is very typical of John. Two things. One is that he was wearing, that's the Order of Canada medal. And whenever he sang in Canada, he would wear that. Canadians are very proud to have that. I know a couple of other people who have one. But the other interesting thing is that you can see how enormous his chest was. I actually saw him once. We went backstage, his wife, went backstage at the Met when he hadn't fully changed out of his costume, and he was bare from the waist up. And just, there was this enormous chest. I mean, it was like you could put two basketballs in there, and he probably had two basketballs in there for his lungs, because his lungs had enormous capacity. And when he would sing, there's a Velsa is the name of a sword in Valkyrie, in Wagner's Valkyrie. And there's a time when the tenor cries out for his sword. He cries, Velsa, a high, loud note. And John's voice there, he could hold it a long time, and it was so powerful that I was playing a 9-foot Steinway with the lid open. I was doing tremolos, and I can make a lot of noise on a piano. I felt like I was playing a toy piano. I could barely hear myself, and it just was weird, absolutely weird. And it happened every time we did opera arias on a tour, and every time that came up, I said, oh, come on, I've got to be able to hear myself this time. And I couldn't. It was just overpowering, his voice. Okay, on to next. Vladimir Ashkenazy became a friend. He asked me to come to his hotel room and photograph his wife. He said that any roll of film that doesn't have a picture of his wife on it was a wasted roll of film. So he's a lovely person. He comes into my studio for this shot, and he sees the red paper that I had pulled down, and he says, oh, no, he says, people might think I'm communist. And so I said, oh, well, I'll change it. And he said, oh, no, oh, just joking. So he was a joker. Another thing, he was a joker. As you see from the previous one, he had sort of a glum look most of the time, or rather all of the time. But as I was photographing him here, all of a sudden he has this half smile. And when I took this picture, he said, oh, no, that's no good. I was making a joke, which is why he was smiling. And the joke, you can see, he was playing a note with his left-hand pinky. So that's a pianist's joke, ha, ha, ha. Also, I took a picture of his hands, and then he said, oh, why you take hands? The record company won't want this. And of course, the record company did want that. Anyway, on to Ellie Ameling. She was wonderful, very friendly, and we still write to each other sometimes. I photographed many album covers for her in those days when the album covers were 12 inches square, big photos. But one of them was a crossover album where she sang Gershwin songs. And maybe other ones, but popular American songs. And she wanted a picture of herself lying on the piano, holding a flute glass of champagne. So fine. She comes over and an assistant comes bringing the glass and the champagne. But I said, we can have the champagne, but only afterwards. And I had some ginger ale already, and we put ginger ale in the picture, and it looked just fine. And I said that because some months previously, I had an actress come, and she had brought a bottle of wine with her and saying, I have to have a little wine because that will relax me for the photos. Well, unfortunately, it relaxed her whole facial muscles, and the photos were not very good. So I learned my lesson. Let's see. Leonard Bernstein is the raffish-looking fellow with a cigarette. This is another quiz, sort of, not too many people will recognize the pianist, but I'm sure some do. This is Lazar Berman, fabulous Russian pianist. And for Bernstein was very easy to photograph while he was working, because he often made intense faces and struck poses, and he was quite a showman. But my Bernstein story is in his apartment. This was a publicity photo for arias and barcarolles. It's a piece that Bernstein had composed, and there were two conductors and two singers who were. We were all in the apartment waiting for Bernstein to come out from the back room, and I had set up my light and everybody was ready. He came out finally, and he was wearing a bright red terry cloth bathrobe. And, he always liked being a character. So he sort of made some jokes and, sat down at the piano, and they were playing, and he made faces like this. And I was all set up. So I said, well, I know the record company doesn't want pictures in a red bathrobe, but I'm going to take pictures anyway. And I did. And the good thing about black and white photography is that you don't see the red at all. If I hadn't told you that was a bathrobe, you probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was in this picture. And of course, the Times was happy to run it. But then, of course, he changed into a dark shirt, and we got the standard picture, which everybody was happy with. Let's see. Oh, Peter Schickele. I asked Gail, I asked Debbie. Peter Schickele was quite well known in Dallas, in Houston. And I was his friend. I had actually been his student. He taught ear training once at Juilliard when he got his composer degree at Juilliard. I took pictures for him over many years. This one is interesting because you look at it, you think, oh, this was photoshopped on. But this was 1970s. There was no Photoshop. There was no digital photography at all. And this, he had somebody cut out the center section of a real flute, a cheap one, of course, but and then put a headband on it and solder the pieces. He actually wore that. He would wear it during a concert for a little while, and then he wore it in the session. And I say for a little while because it was heavy and it hurt. He couldn't, he said, you better take these pictures quickly because I can't wear this long. So I did. Here's another one, which again is way before Photoshop. It would be easy nowadays, but in those days I had to actually hang that top piece from the ceiling, and he would manipulate under it to get that picture. And here's another one. Sorry that it's blurry, but this is not Photoshop. This, he actually jumped, and couldn't do it very many times, but one was good enough. Here is Photoshop. This is quite a bit later. Hair turns gray. This is him dressed up as Petey Kubach and meeting Peter Schickele. And here he is. This is my favorite Photoshop picture. This was quite, a procedure, an operation to do. Actually, it's two shots. The keys and Peter, everything, and the glove. There's a hand in the glove, somebody leaning over the piano and actually pushing the glove into Peter's face and bending his nose like that. So that's all real. And then everything else to the right, the apparatus and the music stand, that's a second picture, which I fused to the first. Here, this is another Houston reference. John Kimura Parker teaches at the Shepherd School in Rice, and he's a wonderful pianist. He did some touring with Peter also. This is just to show you another Houston. The fellow in the blue shirt is Richard Dowling. And Richard is a Houston native, and he had a music store here for a while. Okay, so just some random portraits, and I'm almost going to end here. This is Patty Monson, and she was making a name for herself as a very contemporary flutist. She would play the most experimental pieces. So I decided that I could experiment with her flute, and I did this on my own, and then she loved it and used it. This is a very old picture of Andras, but before his hair turned gray. Also Richard Stoltzman, Richard Good. Cleveland Quartet, they were together for a long time. This is the original version. I guess it was around 1980 or so. And just a picture I really like of Leontine Price. Now, this is a picture I did not take. This was taken around 1900 of Isaac Albeniz. And I mention Albeniz because this is, now I'm going to talk about my third period where I get back to being a pianist. It was 2008. And well, okay, before that, let me say that as a student, I had played one of Albeniz's pieces. Albeniz wrote a lot of very easy piano pieces throughout his life, and he published them to make money. But he was a real virtuoso pianist. And he finally, towards the end of his life, when unfortunately he had a terrible disease, he wanted to write his own music. He made a plan to make 12 pieces and of different parts of Spain, 12 varied pieces. And they're called Iberia, and he made them so difficult that very few pianists ever play them. Also, now somehow Spanish music doesn't really catch on. I have Russian friends who are wonderful pianists. Every time I mention Albeniz or Spanish music to a Russian friend, they just sort of turn away. It's very funny. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but I haven't met any. Anyway, when I was a student, I had played one of the pieces, Triana. And I didn't play it too well, but the thing is that I looked at the other pieces in the book and I just loved them. I thought, oh, this is wonderful, but they're so hard, I could never learn them. Okay, so 50 years pass. And one day I'm in the hall at Juilliard and David Duvall stops me. Now, David taught piano literature to the students in the college, but he also used those students when they had a piece prepared that they had to play for a concert or something. He would have them come and play in the evening. He had a class of amateurs, people who paid to come and hear him lecture and students play various pieces. And it was such a popular course, he actually had 3 sections of it, 3 nights in a row of the same thing. He stopped me in the hall and he said, Peter, somebody tells me you used to be, he just knew me as a photographer. He said, you used to be a fine pianist. Would you ever like to play for my evening division class? And my immediate reaction was, no, thank you. I'm not interested. It's just too much work. I never want to do that again. Even the simplest piece is just an enormous amount of work. So that was that. But a month later, I heard a fellow student, former student, play the entire Iberia at Carnegie Recital Hall. And I went, I didn't like it very much. The thing is, I mean, I respect anybody who learns it and plays it, but I hear it in a personal way. When you know a piece and you really love a piece, it's hard to like other people's performances because they don't hear it the same way you do. That's life. So I was sort of complaining to one of the teachers afterwards that I didn't really like that, or even any of the recordings I'd heard of it. They all seemed sort of dry and not gutsy enough, whatever. And so Julian Martin was a teacher there. He said, he also taught in Spain. He said, you know, there's a wonderful Spanish pianist that nobody's heard of in America because he stayed in Spain. Whoops. Well, where is he? There he is. Esteban Sanchez. He died in 95, I think. He said he remained in Spain all his life, and he made a wonderful recording of Iberia. I'll make you a copy. So he made me a copy, and I flipped because here was a man who played it the way I heard it. And I loved it. And so, of course, I got the music out, and this is another picture of Albeniz. Somehow it didn't seem quite as impossible as it had in the early days. And I struggled with that. Anyway, I called up David Duvall and said, you know, maybe over the summer, I'm going to try to learn 2 of these, and could I play them in your class next year? And he said, absolutely. I played him in his class the first time, and he said right away, he said, Peter, you've got to learn all 12 of them and then record them. And I just laughed out loud. I said, you know, that's, I could never do that. And with his encouragement and with my own crazy enthusiasm, I did eventually do that. It took 3 years, and I recorded them. And as I said before, you can see them, hear them on my website. But right now, to close this talk, I will play a video of them. It may take me a while to get to it, but it shouldn't. that was Malaga. That was my favorite piece from there. I started in the middle because I didn't, it's quite long. So I hope you enjoyed it. And now if you have questions, if there's time, I will be happy to talk.
Yes, please. I have a comment. I didn't know I crossed paths with you quite as many times as I did. I was in the pit at for Porgy and Bess in Houston.
Ah,
I think it was my first real job, and then of course your Ivan Galami and Dorothy DeLay photos are from my era at Juilliard. I was there in 1970. I was studying with Galami in 1977.
oh,
Chura Strakowski, I remember him well. I played with him once in the Houston Symphony, and it was like having a tiger by the tail. He's the most spontaneous soloist we've ever played with, where we
Wow.
just have fits and starts. Wonderful playing, but there was no way to predict what he was going to do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I believe Christoph Eschenbach was conducting. He was a master at staying with him, but it was like, I mean, you never knew what he was going to do next. We just
What piece did he play? Do you remember?
I'm trying to remember what it
Oh,
was.
okay,
I
go ahead.
I believe it was a Russian piano concerto, but it
Oh,
was, I can't remember which one it was, but it was the most spontaneous, unpredictable
Wow.
playing we've ever accompanied.
wow.
So if anyone has any questions or comments, I think we covered a lot of musicians that our generation knows. I see Susan. I'm going to mute myself.
Right.
I have a question, Debbie.
Yes, go ahead.
Peter, what kind of keyboard do you have there in your house?
Uh-huh. Okay, I thought somebody would.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, it's a Yamaha. Yamaha, I think, makes the best ones
Really?
for classical. I mean, maybe for, I don't know about for pop or that's different. Yes, I've had a series of them. They, even the older ones are very good. They feel like a piano. I mean, they don't look like a piano, that's all. But I actually had to play the entire Iberia. It's on, they're on YouTube. I had a concert scheduled at the Institute Cervantes in New York, a Spanish institute. And they let me have a concert on Saturday night because they said, well, we have to rent a piano. We don't have piano, but we'll rent one Friday night for a concert that we're having, and then you can play on Saturday. Well, on Friday morning, they called me and said, oh, they canceled Friday, so we're not getting the piano. But I had already invited like over 100 people to my concert on Saturday. So I took my keyboard and my speakers and my every bench and set it up there. And people came in and they said, where's the piano? You know, but I came out and it sounded fine. The recording of it sounds as you heard. The sampled sounds are really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It does sound wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Isabel, go ahead.
Yeah, Peter, I just wondered where you went to high school. You didn't mention that while you were going to do it.
Okay, the High School of Science in the Bronx.
That's where my brother went because I went to music and art.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, I was in Flushing. I took a bus over the Whitestone Bridge and went up to the high school every day. Interesting.
And I see my brother is on, the one who's going to help you with your recording. He's asking about the model, or maybe you already mentioned that. I'm just seeing the chat now. You said Yamaha. Everett, is that what you needed?
Yeah, he said Yamaha, but what model?
Oh, this is 255. Hi, Everett.
Hi, Peter. Nice to meet you.
I've had, I had a 140, I had a couple of 155s, and now I have a 255. There's a still more modern one I don't have. I think it's 515 or something, but they're all fine. And I beat them to death. I mean, I practice hours and hours on them and they finally go, but they're still much cheaper than having a Steinway that you have to have tuned every now and then. You know, that's what I love about them, is that they're in perfect tune. You can play octaves top and bottom. You know, it's just wonderful to hear the chord, the harmonies. Okay.
Peter, this is Gail.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for your talk. It was so interesting.
Oh, I hope so.
Your photos are fabulous. Rosina Levine looked exactly like that. And I had also met Leonard Bernstein, and he was always like that. You caught people exactly the way they were. And Peter Schickele with,
oh, he's funny.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you so
Oh.
much. And I also heard Sheriff Chakowski play in New York. I knew that he practiced on that upright piano,
Right.
and it was just wonderful. Yeah, very spontaneous solo playing. I never heard him play
Yeah,
with the
right.
symphony. Yeah,
I heard only one of his solo concerts in Carnegie.
yeah,
He was a very sweet man.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I have
Well,
a.
you were fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I thought I was going too long but.
Well, it was all interesting, but we do need to go on now. But it was
Oh, sure.
fabulous.
Okay, go on. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Yes,
Yes.
thanks so much, Peter. That was wonderful. I mean, I could hear those stories forever.
Thanks.
We
Okay,
also have, thanks a million, and we're so privileged to have you as a member of our club now.
Oh, well, it's my privilege, and my apologies to Anita, who made her wait a long time to go on. So I'm looking forward to hearing her now.
Right, so I'm going to introduce Anita Bonanno, who is a wonderful singer. And actually, I first heard you, Anita, I believe it was at Hillel services. I heard you cantering, was the first time I've ever heard you sing. And in the Small World department, she is married to Emil Bonanno, who's a mover and shaker in the astronomy community. And she has been working on a CD that will be a help raise money for the Seeing Eye Dog programs, and has a delightful brief program for us. So Anita, do you want to go ahead and introduce your program?
There's a quote that Helen Keller used to say, and the quote is, "When I attempt to soar, I feel like I'm flying." And it's how I feel when I use my guide dog. Guiding Eyes for the Blind was founded in 1954 by Donald Kauff. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It costs $50,000 to train and raise our guide dog. I've been blessed with 4 wonderful guide dogs. I'm on number 4, waiting for number 5 actually, because McGee's going to be 10. So it's getting, he's getting close to retirement. Guiding Eyes receives no government support. Guiding Eyes relies on donors, and all their money gets donated, and the students' room and board, airfare, and lifetime of the dog is all free to the students. There are 8,000 teams graduated. 92% are Labrador Retrievers, 8% are German Shepherds, and there are approximately 1,000 active teams right now. And Guiding Eyes they have a breeding program. They breed their own dogs. We have puppy raisers who volunteer for the first 18 months to work with our dogs on obedience. They teach them socialization. They take them everywhere they can to put them into different situations. So this is kind of where the CD came in for us. There's 2 others graduates with me on the CD. And I'm in what's called the Specialized Training Program, which provides custom guide dogs for people who have vision, hearing, as well as additional challenges such as hearing loss, or they also have other disabilities that enable that the dogs need to be specially trained. Balance issues is what I have. And also my dog works on the right side as opposed to the left side. Most guide dogs work on the left, but McGee is trained on my right because my left side's not the best. They give follow-up support the entire life of the dog. And the raisers are just fabulous people. My raiser just has a new puppy that she's raising. And the dogs are with them 16 to 18 months. So now I think we'll start playing the songs.
Actually, I have some photos of the dogs first. Should we show those first?
Okay.
Very quickly. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So this one, I'm showing, you have 2 pictures of Ephraim. So I'm showing the first photo if you want to talk about Ephraim a little bit.
Okay, so Ephraim was right before Nemo. I had Ephraim from 2006 to basically 14, I guess, about 8 years. He was cute. He was an old soul. But is that the one with the fire warden? Is that the one?
Now I'm showing the one with the fire warden, if you can explain that.
Okay, the fire warden. Well, when I worked at Texas Medical Center, we had a situation where everybody had to go to a meeting to learn to be a fire warden. And they just didn't want to go. So my boss decided, hey, let's dress Ephraim up in the vest. So that's Ephraim in his fire warden vest. And everybody, it helped him go to the meeting and they were all happy.
And now I'm showing the first portrait of McGee. The rest of the pictures are of your current dog, McGee.
Right? Okay. Are you showing the puppy one?
No, I'm on the sort of the headshot right now.
Oh, okay. That's McGee, who's still with me now.
And I've got you and McGee right now.
And this is when we're doing our graduation picture. So when we graduated in 2015, April 21st.
Okay, and now I'm on to the puppy pictures. Here he
Okay.
is with a black dog.
Okay, that's McGee with his Razor's puppy, Razor's dog. Rick, I think his name was.
And here's McGee by himself as a puppy. He's looking very small from above.
That's him as a puppy.
And then the last couple pictures are you walking with McGee.
Okay. So we're just out walking so you can get an idea of when we use the harness, what happens is I pull back on the handle and he pulls forward. So he's actually guiding.
And then here's a beautiful just portrait of McGee, full body portrait in his harness. And that was a really interesting sort of technical aspect of guiding that I didn't know. And then I'm ending now with your album cover, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
So this summer, I got together with two very good graduate friends of mine, Barbara Henning. You'll hear her. She's going to be on the first song that I'm on. She's doing harmony. And Dr. Jane Perkyns wrote it. She wrote the music and the lyrics for this one. And what started out, I wanted to do a CD of all of my guide dog songs because a lot have been written. And I thought, well, this would be fun. So let's do a fundraiser. So we're now doing a fundraiser for Guiding Eyes, and it's helping the puppy raiser regions because they're the ones that raise the puppies, but they don't get enough attention. So we decided, well, let's do this. So on the cover, you see Barbara and Chad. He's the black lab. And then you'll see Becky and her dog Ballad, and she plays guitar. So the first song on there is her singing Can't You See I'm Working, which was written by Sally Rogers and written for another graduate, but we use it. It's a great song. And so Barbara is with me on two of them, and then I'm on the rest. And
go ahead.
The lyrics are on the inside of the cover, and then it just shows us. We tried to make it where we looked like we were walking, but it was a little difficult to do that.
And let me know if you're ready for me to play your first song.
I'm ready.
All right, I'm going to share my screen.
This is the two of us, and this is actually Nemo's song. Nemo's no longer here. He's my black lab. We didn't have a picture of him, unfortunately, but Dr. Jane Perkyns wrote the words and the music for this one.
Although we just met, it seems like it's always been the two of us. The closer we get, the better it feels to be the two of us. Like Sherlock and Watson, Ginger and Fred, we're the perfect pair. Wherever I go and whatever I do, you'll come with me everywhere. Oh, the two of us. From now on, it's going to be the two of us. It's easy to see that the two of us, we work well together. Oh, partners we were meant to be. I'm so happy to know that you're going to be part of my family. As time goes along, we'll learn more about each other, good things and bad. Our friendship will grow, we'll share all our moments, yes, both happy and sad. I'm sure you have your little quirks, I've got mine. We'll just take it day by day. I know that we're going to get along fine with you here to lead the way. Oh, the two of us. From now on, it's going to be the two of us. It's easy to see that the two of us, we work well together. Oh, partners we were meant to be. I'm so happy to know that you're going to be part of my family. I'm so happy to know that you're going to be part of my family.
And your next song is Ephraim in My Heart.
Yes. Incidentally, Dr. Perkyns was playing on the two of us. I forgot to mention that.
Okay, this is Ephraim in My Heart.
Okay, and Susie Marion wrote the music for this one, and she's also playing for us, for me.
My Ephraim sports a smooth yellow coat. His brown soulful eyes put a lump in my throat. He furrows his brow when he thinks about things, and runs in his sleep as his dog dreams take wing. We have been a great team, and that's really grand. My dear Ephraim loves to lend me a hand. A dog that's more joyous you never will see. Of all dogs, he is the most special to me. Some dogs may be bigger, but none has his soul. With him by my side, I feel I am whole. He loves his work guiding, and that is a plus. He is ready to go in a car, plane, or bus. Dear friend in the night, I'm thinking of you. You make darkness light. You are faithful and true. Your generous spirit, so willing to give, inspires me to love you as long as I live. This letter of love I give now to you, so I may thank you for all that you do. You walk so bravely with head held high, taking me places I never could try. How quickly these past several years have flown. A kinder dog I never have known. I know it will come the day you depart, but forevermore, Ephraim, you'll be in my heart. But forevermore, Ephraim, you'll be in my heart.
And your last song is McGee's song, if you'd like to say something about that.
Okay, yes. So Susie Marion wrote the words for McGee. I tried to do it and just didn't come up with good words, but she did great. And so my friend in Scottsdale, Arizona, Andrea Jill Higgins, wrote the music, and she's also playing for me. So here's McGee's song.
You are my sweet, good-natured McGee. You are the perfect guide dog for
Anita, that was wonderful. Let me make sure everyone can mute themselves in case anyone has any comments or questions. I believe you can. Anybody?
Anita, that was wonderful. Thank you. This is Gail.
Oh,
I
thank
have a question
Yes.
about your reading music and learning music. Do you use Braille? Do you
Not use Braille music. I was one of these weird people that tried to use it when I took piano, and it was hopeless because you had to read, remember it, and play it. And when I got into singing, I just decided I'm going to learn it by rote. It's just so much easier, which is true. It's silly that I did that because I kind of wish sometimes that I had gone back and learned Braille music, but it's not a good system. I don't know if it's bar over bar, so in other words, if it's piano, they do the left hand, the right hand, and then there's no way to tell how to put it together. It's a really poor system.
Wow.
Somebody
And-
needs to put a better system, is my thought.
Emil. Emil needs to do it.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful programmer.
Yeah, he is.
And I have a question because I've heard you sing classical art songs. What about the dynamics and the phrasing? Do you have somebody who reads the music and tells you what's there?
Me has been all these years. Dr. Perkyns and I have worked together, and she was just really instrumental in helping me get, make sure that the dynamics were there and the phrasing and all of that. And of course, Susie Marion and I have worked on that as well. And so any chance I get with anybody who can help with that or make it happen is great.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that was such a great presentation. I loved it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So Stephen Perkyns, the last time we heard him perform live, when we did the tribute to Miss Ruth Burr, I guess it's now been 4 years ago, Stephen performed live, and he was on the program because he was a second prize winner of the Ruth Burr competition when he was a student at Shepherd School. And of course, Stephen has gone on to many more accomplishments and triumphs and made a lovely career. As for the Ruth Burr competition, we've had to postpone it 2 years because of the pandemic. But next April, we do plan to have it again, which will be instrumental again. And that is the year that Stephen won when it was for instrumental. So it'll be the beginning of April next year. And the plug I will make is, I'm sure I'm speaking to all of you who've already renewed your memberships. But if you would like to make an additional donation to the competition funds, as chairman of the Ruth Burr competition and co-chair of the Cahan competition, we would love to see that happen. We're so looking forward to having it live this time. We even did the Cahan competition virtually, and we're hoping to do both live in the spring. So thank you for your support in the past. And now to Stephen.
So that was a terrific ending to the meeting. I'll have Susan end it for us. Thank you.
Well, again, Debbie, Gail, another triumph. Thank you so much. Everyone thanks you so much for all you've done to prepare us for this meeting and for the rest of the fall. Our next meeting is October the 19th. It will be on Zoom, and the November meetings will be as well. We hope to be live and in person at the earliest possible moment, but as Debbie mentioned earlier, this gives us an opportunity to hear from speakers that we wouldn't have the opportunity to hear from any other way. So we're very grateful and thank you for all that you've done. So look forward to seeing you October the 19th. And maybe Debbie at this moment can tell you who the little brief introduction on who that speaker will be and our performers. Thank you again for coming. Debbie?
So I'm going to ask Gail to do that. Gail actually found all the speakers for the first half of the year.
Okay, well, I want to say that the speaker is Alyssa Goralnik, who is a very fine pianist herself. She has, she's a so-called amateur pianist, but she's still studying, etc. She was a professor of English at the University of Colorado for many years, and she switched over to being a professor of English for the music department at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And so she is going to speak about that. She's written several books. She's in the process of writing a book on literature and music. And so that's going to be fascinating. That's something that we could not have without Zoom. In terms of the performers, I have some definite ideas, but I want to reach out to our membership to be brave. As you've seen, you can even be brave by submitting your recordings and your videos, or you can do it live. We will work with you to make it happen. So please come forward. And I'm doing this meeting from Las Vegas. So greetings from Las Vegas. Bye. Thanks.